Hello, everyone, and here's today's privacy snapshot. It's being brought to you by Paul Breitbarth, who's the Director of EU Policy and Strategy at TrustArc. And Paul's going to be giving us a privacy snapshot highlight on the updated consent guidelines from the European Data Protection Board. Paul.
Thanks, Teresa, and hi, everyone. Yes, I thought it was relevant because the European Data Protection Board about a month ago released their updated consent guidelines following requests from companies and data protection authorities across Europe on especially what to do with cookie walls. But let me remind you first of the initial guidance that was already there on the use of consent, Article 6A of the GDPR, 6.1a, that already spells out that consent in any situation needs to be free, specific, informed, and unambiguous. Free means that there needs to be a real choice for the individual. So it cannot be a detrimental effect for them. They cannot have any negative consequences. And free also means that it cannot be given when there is an imbalance of power, for example, in an employment situation. Specific means that the consent needs to be provided for a very specific purpose, a very specific set of data being processed by the organization, following full information to the individual about what is going to happen with their data. That is the part about being informed. And it needs to be unambiguous, meaning that it needs to be an act of the individual. It cannot just be silence. It cannot be a pre-tick box, but for example, ticking a box or writing on a form or in a website, I do consent to my data being processed for this purpose. That would be valid consent. Then consent always needs to be able to be withdrawn in the same fashion, the same way as it was initially provided. And that means that if you provide consent online by ticking a box on a website, then also going to that same website should allow you to withdraw your consent. If you gave consent initially in a paper form, then of course sending a letter to withdraw your consent would make more sense. And then finally, the big question on the cookie walls and the scrolling. The board has said very clearly now and very unambiguously that cookie walls are not allowed because cookie walls do not constitute a valid, freely given consent. Even if the consent in a cookie wall would be specific and unambiguous and informed, because all that information is provided, it is never free because the negative consequence for the individual would be not having access to information or a service, which they should be able to have without tracking. And also scrolling, which has sometimes been seen as constituting consent. If you just scroll through a website or just start using the website, then consent is implied. Also from that, the board has said, no, that is not allowed because that is not an unambiguous act. It could be that you are inadvertently scrolling or just scrolling to read the privacy notice, which is not the same thing as providing active, unambiguous consent.
Thank you, Paul. So there you have it in 3 highlights: free, specific, informed, and unambiguous, no cookie walls, no scrolling, and the withdrawal aspect. Thanks for the highlight, Paul. And the updated full guidelines are worth a read for those of you who are impacted by this technology.